Welcome to the Mac System Manager and Navigation Training session. I'm your Exact Americas trainer, Vince Stefanetti. In this session, we're going to show you how easy it is to use the Mac System Manager to configure your system. Now we're going to cover all the basics and as well get into more detail as we move along. Don't be worried if you know little or nothing about Macs. We're going to start at the beginning and explain everything. It is important to know that you have a complete set of documentation in PDF format installed with your Mac system. Many of these items are accessible through the System Manager under each module. You also have an online portal that contains a knowledge base and many other resources. Mac users can gain access to the portal by navigating to https://customers.exact.com. If you do not yet have access to the portal, be sure to contact your customer advocate so that you can get a username and password to access the portal. Alright, now let's take a look at what we're going to learn. First, we're going to cover some basics. Then we're going to show you how to log into Macs. We'll show you how to navigate the System Manager. We'll show you how to use the Control Panel. We'll show you how to add and edit user security. We'll show you how to use the Report Viewer. We'll show you how to view your license and activate your product. We'll also show you how to set your dates on the shop calendar and how to customize menus and tabs. Also how to personalize your Mac system, and then we're going to go over an overview and information flow of the entire Mac system. Now what is Mac exactly? Well, Mac is a series of modules contained in a main screen called the System Manager. Mac's modules are categorized by organization structure in program tabs within the System Manager. Information flows from one module to the next in a logical order flow. Order flow in system behavior is controlled by switches and part-specific configuration. The System Manager holds switches and system-wide effects. Modules contain more specific and primarily part-specific configuration data and manage more specific information. Now, what exactly is material requirements planning? Well, it's basically a system for effectively managing material requirements in a manufacturing process. Information systems have long been an important part of the manufacturing environment. In the 1960s, manufacturers developed Material Requirements Planning, MRP. According to the American Production and Inventory Control Society, APICS, MRP is a set of techniques that uses bill of material data, inventory data, and the master production schedule to calculate requirements for materials. It makes recommendations to reorder materials. Furthermore, because it is time-phased, it makes recommendations to reschedule open orders when due dates and need dates are not in phase. Time-phase MRP begins with the items listed on the master production schedule and determines the quantity of all components and materials required to fabricate those items and the date that the components and materials are required. Time-phased MRP is accomplished by exploding the bill of materials, adjusting for inventory quantities on hand or on order, and offsetting the net requirements by the appropriate lead times. Mac accomplishes this in its many modules and facilities. As you go through the system and you go through this training session, you'll see how this actually works. Now, as you can see in our diagram here of the Mac's information flow, it mirrors the MRP concept described earlier. Quotes and customer orders, forecast and master scheduled orders drive MRP. MRP looks what's on order, what's on hand, and then adjusts accordingly, creating purchase orders and shop orders. RMAs are also included in the process separately. Now, each one of the types of orders in the system is given a unique number series assigned to the type of order that it is. Forecast orders begin with a 1. Sales orders begin with a 2. Master schedules orders begin with a 3. MRP planned orders begin with a 4. Shop orders begin with a 5. Purchase requisitions begin with a 6. Purchase orders begin with a 7. RMAs 8, and quotes 9. Each one of the order number series fits into its separate place in the overall flow of information through the system. Now each order number series in MAX has a related order status to identify where it is in its life cycle. As you can see below here, there's 6 of them. In order its status 1 is planned. In order its status 2 is approved. In order its status 3 is released, 3. In order its status 4 is completed. In order its status 5 is closed. And in order at status 6 is canceled. Not all order number series go through the same life cycle. Some sequence through 3 to 5. Others start at 1, and so on. Now this diagram shows the order types in MAX, such as quotes, forecast orders, and sales orders, and their related order statuses. As you can see, as mentioned before, not all orders go through the same life cycle, so they do not have the same status sequence. All right, let's go ahead and log in and take a look at the System Manager. Okay, to log into MAX, simply double-click on the MAX icon on your desktop. The next thing you'll see is the MAX logon screen as seen here. Now there are several items on the screen. Company, where you specify the company database you want to log on to. The authentication type that you'll log into MAX with. Your username, your password, how many system users are currently logged in. You can also specify the license path and view current users in the system. If you want to clear disconnected users, click this button. Alright, now the default login for MAX is manager in all capital letters and password in all capital letters. If you want to specify a different database to log into, use the drop-down box here to specify which you want to log into. If you have a different authentication type other than the MAX authentication, there's only 2, but you may select Windows Authentication if this has been set up in your system. After entering the user and password, click the Log On button. Now once you've logged on, you'll be presented with the System Manager. Its title is up here at the top, and also specifies the username of who's logged in. We used Manager, so you can see that here. Down in the bottom, you'll see which database you're logged into. Now there are a number of different areas of the System Manager. The tabs menus here allow you to navigate to the different modules in MAX. The Activity menu has all the different functions of the System Manager. The Control Panel allows you to add shortcuts, user notes, and system notes. Okay, now let's look at these items in a bit more detail. In the tabs, you can see that the modules are listed and their associated documentation. So if you want to review the documentation of any one of these, just click the documentation button here. The Control Panel is another section. You can add shortcuts. There are many here, but they are editable. Right-click, make your selections, and then click OK. Now you also have the option here to edit these. If you want to add a new one, click the item here, and you can specify a document, a program, or even a web link. Click Save. And close. If we double click it, it'll take us to Google. Alright, now every user has their own notes in every module in the system. You type in your notes here. Now each dialog box within a module has its associated notes as well. For example, in the Bill of Materials module, for this dialog here, Part Master, we can enter in a note. If we go to the Visual Bill of Materials module, within the Bill of Materials, we can add additional notes. Alright, now those are user specific. So anybody who's logged in, manager is logged in right now, I've just added notes for each one of these boxes in the system. Now system notes are only allowed to be entered by supervisors in the system. These display in all modules in every place in the system. Alright. So that's how the control panel works. One other item of note here is that you can actually hide it and make it come back and pin it again. If you want to remove it entirely, click the X. Now if you want to bring that back, you would need to go to the Options menu and click the shortcut pane. That'll make it come back. Now you can also add or remove any of these buttons in the toolbars by clicking here and making your selection. The toolbars are a shortcut way to allow you to get right to a particular area of the system manager, as in system configuration or user security even. Now the menus up here are actually dockable or undockable. You just grab it, drag it, and put it where you'd like. And we'll put it back. Now as mentioned earlier, System Manager is the place where you set global switches for Macs. The main place that this is done is under Activity, System Configuration. Now the System Configuration Editor allows you to configure these switches and global information within the system. A couple items of note are your billing address, your company data, your shipping address. System switches is very important and contains some very global switches that you can configure for Macs. These are covered in each of the individual module training sessions that are forthcoming after this one. Feel free to go through here and investigate and learn more about these. They're very important, and this is how you actually set up your system for your specific business environment. Okay, so let's take a look at user security in Macs. So from Activity, click User Security. Now there are three main sections here: the list of users, the modules and features, and the security level. Now the security levels in Macs are no access at all, read-only, read-write, and supervisory. Granting supervisory access gives access to special functions in the system. These are covered in the other training sessions that we're providing here and explain when supervisory access may or may not be needed. Now, under Modules and Features, if you click on the X, you'll see that it expands out all the way down to the individual sections of the system. So as in Part Master, this lists all the different tabs that were in the Part Master in the Bill of Materials module. You can grant specific access by clicking these and then checking the box. Now we're not going to change manager there, but I just wanted to show you that you can drill way down to these specific functions in the system. Okay. Now, if you want to add a user, all you need to do is either click on the X here, or from the menu, click Add User. You could specify the authentication type here as just being Mac authentication, or we provide for the use of Windows authentication. In that case, you'd specify your domain, and if you click the ellipsis button, you'll get a list of users. You can select that user here, click OK. You can double click it, and then click OK and add that user. Except I have that one already in there. One moment. Alright, to add a user, it's quite simple. You can click the green X here, or from the Users menu, click Add. You could specify either Mac authentication, which just means that the users and passwords are contained within Mac, or you can use Windows authentication. In that case, you'd specify the domain here, click the ellipsis button to get a list of users, double click that user, and then click OK, and that will add that user to the system. Now, if you have many users to manage in Mac throughout your organization, it may be a good idea to first specify departmental security access users in Mac. That way you only specify and configure one time for many users, and these can be copied over. You can see here that I added one for purchasing and one for shipping. Nobody will actually use these, but you can put them in here, configure it once for the entire department, and then copy that security over by using the copy function. I have buyer 1 and buyer 2 here. I'll select buyer 2, click OK. Now whichever security access I had in purchasing now exists in buyer 1 or buyer 2. Same for shipping. I would add in some shipping users here and then copy it over. Now you also have the ability to clone a user. If I wanted to clone shipping, I could say yes and say I wanted to use Mac authentication. Add another user here. Click OK. And now I've cloned shipping to ship 1. Alright, you can change the passwords. Center integration exists in here as well. And you can select the autosave if you're in here. So if you're configuring a bunch of these right here, you want to make sure that it gets saved automatically. Alright. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the other activity menu options here. So next one is the report viewer. Now, several organizations buy one copy of Crystal Reports Professional to do report design. That's a good idea. You should probably only have a copy of Crystal Reports for those who are going to be designing reports. With Mac, we install the runtime engine for Crystal Reports automatically because Mac uses Crystal Reports in all of its report functions and all of its modules. Now this report viewer is a nice tool to use to be able to allow users to go into System Manager and run Crystal Reports without having Crystal Reports installed on their workstation. Now there's a few configuration options here. You can select a company, you can select the report, you could specify what kind of connectivity is going to be used, you can select the kind of authentication you're going to use. Now our standard installation uses a user called report. Using that, you can go ahead and run the report. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and use Windows authentication because that's how I have it set up here. But I specified a report here, this ABC analysis. Another item of note here is to place all these custom reports that you have on a shared drive out on the network. that makes it very easy to manage and prevents reports from getting distributed all over the place on individual workstations. You can create a folder called Custom Reports and then specify the departments and place the reports there. So you can go Custom Reports Purchasing, Shipping, Engineering, and so on. Here I just have a simple ABC analysis report that I'm going to use for the demonstration. We're going to use that one. One other thing here is that you have a set of advanced options. That means that these items will come up in the crystal window when you run the report. You can select or unselect these items here depending on your preference. Alright, let's go ahead and run our report. Okay, so here's our ABC analysis. Now, from the selections that we made on the Advanced tab, we have them visible here. We can specify the size. We can do a search if we want to. If the report's running a long time, you can actually have it stop loading. You can run through the report on an individual page, go to top of page, go to end of page, or even type in the page. You can select to print, and you can select to actually export. Now this is a handy function because if you want to actually deliver the report via email, you can do that here, but you can send it to many destinations. A disk file per se, an Exchange folder, some other application. But for email, you just select MAPI. Now if you have any MAPI client, that's an email client such as Outlook on your workstation, you'll be able to use this function. So say we want to send this ABC analysis in a PDF format through email. We just make the selections as seen here and click OK. It runs the report, we click OK, and we get another window that is actually a window to send the email. So you can select the address. We'll apply these for right now. And then we'll close Bill of Materials, open it up again, go to a browsable field, and you can see now it's not blue anymore, it's got the gray shading. Alright, our next function here is how to personalize the max. Alright, so there's a number of different themes that you can use. Office 2007, Luna, Royale, Vista, or the default. Now in some cases you may have different options here that you can use. Light blue, aqua, silver, and so on. And in some cases you can change the font size. Your command bar theme can be changed too. Office 2000, XP, and so on. You can also preview these settings by clicking on this button here, and you can see the changes as you go through them for the different sections. Alright, let's go on to our next item here. There is an option to specify a license path if you'd like to do that here. But let's get into the database maintenance here. Now, if you load a new company into the SQL database, you'll need to attach to it using this function. You'll specify a name for the company here. You can make configuration settings here. and you'll need to specify the credentials by which to log into the database. You can use the primary if you want, or you can specify credentials for either Windows authentication or SQL authentication to log on. So we'll go ahead and log into one that I have here just to show you how this works. It'll list all the databases that are currently on the system. We'll select Demo 2010 and click Attach Company. Now if we go further here and go into Company Maintenance, you'll see that you have a list of every database that you can possibly attach to that's on the SQL Server database. Now you can make it active or inactive, and you can maintain it here by clicking the ellipsis button over on this side. You'll get another dialog box, and here you can actually delete the company if you want to. And when you do that, it'll show you the data files and ask you if you want to delete the SQL database files as well. We'll cancel out of that, but you can see that this function is available and you can maintain all the databases that you might have on your system. You can create a new company as well. You specify the company ID and the name. Specify the credentials that allow you to log into SQL Server so you can do this function, and you can click Create and create a new company. You can make it a test environment company. You can add sample data to it. You can make an archive of the existing company, and so on. You can look at the current system users. The currently logged in person is highlighted in green. All right. Now one other function that you may need to use is on the help menu here, and that would be the batch information. This tells you when you're working with support, you can actually tell them what version of Max you're running, what version your client is, what version your server is, and what version your database is. You could also specify your update options, production server, and whether you want to auto update the client or not. If you uncheck that, you can have it automatically update now. We've been in this dialog, so it's not highlighted, but if that's unchecked and you go out and you go back in again, you could select to update just by checking the box. Auto update means that when you log into the system and it sees new information out there, updates and so on the server, because a new batch has been installed, it will automatically download the batch for you. Okay, now we've gone through all the basic functions of the System Manager. We've covered the tabs, the menu items, the shortcuts, the control panel, and so on. Now let's go ahead and take a quick tour through Max and give you an idea of how you might start to implement the system. Okay, so let's go to Engineering tab, Bills and Materials. Now, Max is basically a part ID or part driven system. So the first thing that anybody does is they add parts into Max. Now you can go into Bill of Materials and you can add parts here, but there are other functions that allow you to add parts, which I'll show you in a moment. By clicking on the Part Master Editor, that gives you the part master and all the part specific configuration data. You can add parts one by one here and enter all the specific information. Some items of importance on this screen are going to be your unit of measure, your primary stock location, and your commodity code. The commodity code is a useful field because it allows you to categorize parts, and this commodity code field is used in many inquiries and reports in Max. So this is an important one to consider when you're adding parts into the system. Okay, as far as adding parts goes, if we go to Utilities, there's an Extract, Transform, and Load program. Now, what this allows you to do is to load information into Max using a standardized XML format. You can extract the formats here, and you can see all the different tables that are available to extract. These are also available to load. You can use tools such as Excel or more specialized tools such as XML Spy to edit your files and load them into the system. Most have a parts database somewhere, so if you do have that information available to you and you want to go ahead and do a batch load, you do that here. Okay, so you add parts in the system, you build your product structures, and that's done in the Visual BOM section of Bill of Materials. There's a BOM builder pane which visually shows you the product structure and allows you to edit the quantity per and so on. It allows you to link to more specific information in the Part Master tabs under Bill of Materials. And if you double left click, it throws your structure down into the product structure pane. And another nice feature here is that the system allows you to drag and drop, which is very, very handy when you're building structures. Here's a little example. Let's select a few parts here. Now if I left Shift key and hold down my right mouse button, I can drag these parts over and throw them on the product structure. Likewise, if I want to grab one from this area, same thing. Left Shift key, right mouse click, and I drag it on there. Now I won't be saving this, but you get the idea that you have the facility to build your bill of materials by doing a drag drop, which is a very handy facility. Okay. Now along with adding parts into the system, you want to consider some configuration. You want to add your costs. That's also done in the Bill of Materials module, or it's loaded. That's done under the Accounting tab. And earlier I restricted my access to that, so I'm going to quickly go back into User Security for Manager, Bill of Materials, and change my security back to Supervisory. Now, as you can see here, see how there's a number of these that are marked in green here? That means that there's lower level security, and this is a summary of which ones are actually in this section. So I'm going to change that. I'm just going to give myself supervisory access to everything there and go ahead and save that. Okay, I'll go ahead and close and then go back into Bills of Materials. Click on Part Master. Oh, there's my Accounting tab. That's the one that I needed. Okay, so for all your lower level parts, your part type B, you can see here it's a normal purchase part. You're going to want to enter in your material cost. So let's select one here. Go ahead and browse. And let's find a purchase part. And each one of these part types has an associated icon. You can see the master schedule part has the top hat. Normal manufactured has the little hammer. And purchase parts have the dollar and change symbol. So here's a purchase part, this keyboard. I could change the material cost here. Now you want to go through and add all your material costs to your purchase components. They're manually costed, which means they're manually entered. If I switch this over to automatic, you'll see that it grays that out. That means that the cost roll-up will actually handle the cost, but at a lower or lowest level component, you would never do this. You would always want to set it to manual and enter in your material cost. So you've added your parts, you've added your structures. Next thing you would do is you would recalculate low-level codes so the system knows all the different levels that the components are at in the product structures you've just added. And then you want to go ahead and do a cost roll-up. And that's done under here, under Finance, under Costing. This is a batch process that rolls up all the costs. You'd select this and run it. Now you have to check Save to Part Master if you want to save it to the live data set. If you're going to do a simulation or you're going to roll cost to a different cost set, which is covered in another training session, you'd specify this here. But for our purposes here, we'll just go ahead and run it and have it saved to the part master, which is our live data set. And you can see it's giving us a warning, hey, this is going to change your inventory value. Do you want to proceed? Yes, we do. Okay. And we'll go ahead and close that. All right. Okay, so we've added parts, we've added structures, we've run recalculate low-level codes, we've added costs, and we ran a cost roll-up. Okay, the next thing you'll probably want to do is add your initial inventory. That's done in the inventory control module. Go to Activity, Transactions, and you're presented with the inventory transaction screen here. So 3 sections here. You select the transaction here. We would be doing cycle counts. We have a grid down here so we can manage multiple parts at one time. And then we have a part stock section here, or part stock pane, which will show us all the stock room, locator, and quantity for that any given part. Okay, so the next thing would be to cycle count all your inventory in, and that's done here. Now once you have all your part specific information in your initial inventory in, you'd want to start in on implementing sales order entry or sales order processing right here. Now sales order processing has a lot of detail associated with it as far as processing parts, as far as setting up their cost and their pricing structure. That's all done through sales order processing data. You have to add customers, code data such as currency, ship via, terms, and so on. Entering in part sales information where you add all your pricing, quantity price base, customer base pricing. The training session on sales order processing covers this in detail, but we're just going to kind of gloss over it here and show you a few things. Okay, so once you've configured that and you've set up your switches and system configuration for sales order processing, then you can begin to add orders. So you'd add your custom orders here. Now those can drive MRP if they're set at part type code A. If you're going to master schedule, well then you would have to go into Materials, Master Scheduling, and begin to add orders for your M part types, which are master schedule part types, to drive MRP. You would also enter forecast orders here. So if you recall back to our little structure at the very beginning of the session here, we had a diagram that had forecast, customer, and master scheduled orders at the top, which were the drivers for MRP. Well, that's how you do it. You go into sales order processing and add orders, or you go into master scheduling and add orders here to drive MRP. You have your current inventory balances here, and so MRP is going to look at what you have on hand. It's also going to look at what you have on order as far as purchasing is concerned, and it's going to balance out and give you suggestions, pull in, push out orders, give you signals that you need to do things, and exceptions, and so on. Okay. So let's quickly look over MRP and purchasing. So the MRP module contains the MRP explosion. This is the dialog for that. Under Activity, it has a detail screen which will show you the available amount of a part, available to promise, and available to forecast. Let's look at one of our parts here. Okay, nothing for that one. How about our keyboard? Okay, well, it looks like we need to actually go ahead and run that, so we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll find ourselves a good example here. Okay. Well, let's take a look at 135.30. Oh, that's a bulk part. Okay. Not a good example. Okay, so let's find something else here. I think some of our cookie product was available to us, and there we go. Okay. All right. So you can see here, there's a switch in Max that it will transfer the reference from the sales order here. So as you can see, it's shown here, but that has a requirement associated with it, this one. And it has planned orders over here that it created for that. So here's our demand order, our requirement, and here's our result of MRP telling us we need 500 twice for those different due dates that we have. Okay. And if you double click here, you can actually peg up and see where it actually came from, which is a nice feature. Okay. Now our result of MRP here is going to tell us to do things. We're looking at the planner action here. But we can go into what's called the Order Navigator and look at more results. Okay, let's see what kind of parts we need to buy after that MRP run. Okay, well, we have a sample in here which is a looks like we're building some cookies, so it's telling us that we need various things here and we have planned orders for them. Now, as you can see, we can drag the columns over and position them. So we want to move our part ID and our description over, we can do that. But we have the ability here to go through and approve and release these. If you recall one more time back to our original diagram, every order in the system has a life cycle, and that's represented by the order status. So approved would be a status 2 and release would be a status 3. These orders are sitting here right now at a status 1, which is planned. All right, so here's our order number here. Now, if we wanted to release these for purchase, we could do that here. Say we need the whole eggs. Click Approve and Release, and then Save. Okay, so we've just approved those. Now, if we want to release these for purchase, we would go over to the purchasing module, and we go into purchase schedule. And I think we were looking at eggs. So we can select by part ID. And let's show everything for that part. Click the query button, and there we go. Okay, well, the red means that it's past due. Okay. Now, if we select one of these items, you can see that it then highlights the buttons down below. Assign allows us to assign it to a current purchase order for a specific vendor. We may not have an association for this, but we'll try to do it here. Okay, no POs there. Okay, so our part does not have a vendor. So if we want to go ahead and set that up, we would go to Purchase Part Data, Vendor Part Data, and associate a vendor with our part. Okay, so V100. We're going to go ahead and buy some eggs from them. Okay. Let's see if we have any POs there at all. Nope, we don't. Okay. Well, we'll use another function then. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do a purchase order. We'll do a new one. Our vendor is V100. Put that in there. Okay, and then we have our part here. Now we have it selected. And what we're going to do is I held down the left shift and the right mouse button. And as you can see, I'm going to drag this order, this approved purchase requisition here, onto the PO. And it went ahead and assigned it, so you can see it's right there. Now we can enter in what our unit price is. Okay. Well, that's a lot of eggs, but we'll go ahead and save that. All right. Now we created that purchase order because we do need the eggs. So after the purchase order is created and it's sent off to the vendor, then we would go ahead and receive this in. But we may want to go ahead and print this purchase order and maybe even email it to the vendor. Okay, so we can go about that a couple different ways. When we're on the purchase order dialog here like this, you can go ahead and click the print button right here. And that'll actually bring up the purchase order print dialog box. You have a whole bunch of options here to do a range or an individual one. And we'll go ahead and just use the portrait form here. I'll make a comment on forms here in a moment. But let's go ahead and run this. Okay, now here's our printed purchase order. This is very plain. It's not designed to be printed out on a LaserJet. There are forms that are LaserJet friendly that are available in the system. You would need only to select them. We'll go over that in the purchasing module training session. But I just wanted to show you here, after you add the purchase order, you can go ahead and print it. We went over before how you can actually go through and click the export function, click on MAPI, and you can send this PO in PDF format. Okay, so we've sent off the purchase order to the vendor. Next thing we would do is we turn around and receive that back into stock, so we do that in inventory control. Okay, so we go to our transaction screen. Receipt, select purchase order. Okay, and we can go ahead and specify our PO number here. I'll do it in the grid in this example. There it is for the eggs. Do a query. There's our quantity. I would highlight that and click process. And we just received that to stock. Okay, so now we have our inventory of eggs that'll help us build our higher level structure. So similar procedure here, you would go through and run your MRP explosion to approve your orders out of MRP. Likewise, well, for purchase parts, likewise you would do that for manufactured parts, except you'd be releasing shop orders. So if we go back over to MRP, in our navigator here, instead of selecting purchase parts, we could select manufactured parts. And let's see what MRP gave us. Okay, well, it gave us some orders here for making cookies. So we can go ahead and select that one there. Approve it. And you can see it changed it to a shop order. Did you see that 5 series? I selected approve and release, which means it moved from 400 status 1 to 400 status 2, and then to 500 status 3 because it's now a release shop order. Okay, so let's go find this order here in shop floor control.